without mention of this man called Alasinga Perumal. So Alasinga Perumal is was Swamiji's foremost devotee here. So because when you talk about Swami Vivekananda in Madras, the first name that anyone can come up with is that of Alasinga Perumal. So a man who hailed from Chikmagalur in interior Karnataka, and from there he comes to Madras, and he is basically a science graduate. He has what is called a BA degree in science. So and he joins as a teacher. So he's a teacher by profession. He teaches at the Pachapas High School, a very hallowed institution in Georgetown in North Madras. And so Alasinga Perumal is one of Swamiji's closest disciples, and he's one of Swamiji's ardent admirers. And the efforts that Alasinga Perumal takes to take Swamiji so because it's around this time that there is news that a parliament of world religions is being conducted in Chicago in the US. And Alasinga Perumal first comes to hear about it through his uncle, Yogi Parthasarathi Iyengar, who is a Sanskrit scholar, and he's a scholar of some renown because he has connections with organizations like the Hindu League of America and all that. So Yogi Parthasarathi Iyengar gets his invitation for the Parliament of World Religions. And so Alasinga Perumal and his band of friends decide, like there has to be a representative of Hinduism there. And so that's the time coincides that Swami Vivekananda has just arrived in Madras and he has delivered this lecture. And so they decide who else can be a better representative than Swami Vivekananda. So that's how Swamiji actually, and then how the entire journey comes about is a matter which is I think best left for a separate talk by itself. The efforts that Alasinga Perumal takes, and then how Swamiji goes, and then all that. I think it's a topic which is out of the realm of today's discussion. So Alasinga Perumal, okay, so and then Swamiji goes to the Chicago, the Parliament of World Religions. What happens there is history. I mean, and then he's now a hero, a monk. I mean, who's taken Hinduism to the West. I mean, he's delivered a tremendous address, and he's now a hero. So fast forward to 4 years later. I'm sorry you can't see for some reason the presentation seems to be stuck there. So fast forward to 4 years later, and Swami Vivekananda returns to Madras in 1897, and he's accorded hero's welcome. From February 6th to February 14th of 1897, he stays at the Ice House, what today is known as the Vivekananda Villa. Ice House because it was originally meant to store a structure that was originally meant to store ice. So in 1897, he stays there, and he's the guest of a man again from Mysore called Biligiri Iyengar. Biligiri Iyengar is an advocate, he's a vakil, and he has see what happens is the structure was constructed in 1842 and by the government given on lease to a company called the Tudor Ice Company. So Tudor Ice Company was founded by a man called Frederick Tudor with the intention of importing ice from the frozen ponds of New England in the US, and because there was a time when ice was not available here. So that was the purpose for which the thing was initially founded. So Tudor was a pioneer in that aspect. But by the 1880s, the business starts to kind of plateau, and then there is Indian competition that is coming up, and so the business finally collapses. So post that, the Biligiri Iyengar purchases the ice house and converts it into his residence. So, and during his time, is known as Castle Kernan. Kernan was a judge of the Madras High Court, and so one of Biligiri Iyengar's. Biligiri Iyengar admired Kernan immensely, so he names it Castle Kernan after the name of after Justice Kernan. So Swamiji stays as a guest of Biligiri Iyengar for 9 days, and then he delivers a series of lectures across the city, and the city are just astounded. I mean, they had heard him. The few of them who had become devotees from 4 years ago. Now that number has just multiplied manifold because of his stay here for 9 days and the talks that he delivers across the city. And when it's time for him to leave, and the people of Madras, they ask him. I mean, there are a few people who ask him, I mean, Swamiji, now you're leaving, so who will continue your good work? And then he says, I will send you someone who's more orthodox than the most orthodox of you, and who is at the same time unsurpassed in his devotion to the Guru. And that's how Sashi Maharaj or Swami Ramakrishna comes to Madras. A month after, so probably in March of 1897, Sashi Maharaj comes to Madras, and that's how the seeds of the Ramakrishna movement in South India are sown. So that's in brief how the Ramakrishna Mutt in South India, the movement in South India takes root. Let's go to the talk. Let's jump into the talk completely. Now, you must realize, so we're talking about the period of 1890s, the late 1890s and the early 1900s. So that's a time when there is immense political activity in the country that's going on. There's immense political activity, and there is the public consciousness is a lot more awakened now, and so there are people who are speaking out vociferously against government, against public policy and things like that. And in 1905, of course, there would come the partition of Bengal, which is which is deemed a very pivotal moment in the history of the freedom struggle. And then the Congress, the Indian National Congress, founded in 1885, itself is now kind of it's headed for split because there are two factions even within the Congress. So, and in 1908 would come a great split, between what they call the moderates and the extremists, the two camps of the Indian National Congress. And the extremists were, of course, people who believed that, in a more, what should I say, if I can, for want of a better word, a more violent form of, struggle, a violent form of getting freedom, obtaining freedom for the country. Whereas the moderates were, as the word suggests, more for a moderate, more for nuanced debate and things like that. So that was, so that's all that is, just around the corner. And there, in at that time comes, it's still stuck at the same grammar box, right? So there, at that time, there is a man who is a poet, a man from South India, who is slowly starting to make waves. A man called Subramanya Bharati, born in 1882 in a place called Ettayapuram. Ettayapuram is a small village in Tirunelveli district, and so that is where he has. Ettayapuram is a samasthan, or a samasthanam as they say. So it's a princely thing. So there is a Raja of Ettayapuram. So and Subramanya Bharati has his early education in Ettayapuram. His father is a Tamil scholar, and Bharati is interested in Tamil at a very, very young age. So, and so the Maharaja of Ettayapuram takes a special liking to Bharati, and Bharati spends a lot of time discussing, even at a young age, discussing literature and composing poems and discussing with the elderly, the scholars in the Ettayapuram Maharaja's court. So that's so Subramanya Bharati is when he is 5 years of age, his mother passes away, and at the age of 14, Bharati is married to a remarkable woman called Chellama. So there was child marriage. In those days, child marriage was quite prevalent, right? So Bharati was 14 and Chellama was, I think, 7 or something when they were married. 1897, just probably kind of coinciding with the time when Swamiji is also coming back to India. So Subramanya Bharati's father passes away. So that's kind of a very pivotal moment again in Bharati's life, because his father meant a lot to him, and the family was in decent financial state, but then but over a period of time, due to various reasons, they have fallen into kind of needy circumstances, and so Subramanya Bharati is sent, or he goes to Banaras to stay with his aunt, and he stays there for about 4 or 5 years. And in 1903 or so, the Raja of Ettayapuram, who is gone to Delhi to attend the coronation darbar, he is coming back to Madras, and on the way he is coming back to his native town state, and on the way he comes to Banaras and meets Bharati there, and so he invites Bharati back to Ettayapuram. So that's how Bharati comes back to Ettayapuram, and his job is to just kind of give the Raja company, discuss things with him, read papers and discuss and things like that. After a brief point of time, Bharati leaves the entire program. I think he believes that he's meant for higher things, or he's meant for bigger things. And then has a small stint as a teacher in Madurai, and then in 1904 comes to Madras. So when Bharati comes to Madras, he joins a paper as a sub-editor, a paper called the Swadesh Mitran. The Swadesh Mitran is a Tamil newspaper that was founded by a man called G. Subramania Iyer. Subramania Iyer, interestingly, was one of the founders of The Hindu in 1878. And interestingly, Subramania Iyer was also one of the founders of the Triplicane Literary Society at which Swamiji first spoke. So you find that, but when you read or when you go through Subramania Bharati's life, you will find that there are multiple instances where he's had interactions, regular interactions with people who have been directly or indirectly involved with the Ramakrishna movement. Right? So I mean, it's I don't know, probably was it kind of preordained or what, it's something that's beyond the realm of our understanding. But it's very interesting to know that. Sorry, unfortunately you can't see a photograph of Bharatiyar and his wife Channamma, so which I mean, so the presentation has a lot of interesting archival photographs, so it's unfortunate that we're not able to do that here. Two men who are very two men who are very closely of the many men that Bharati interacts with, who have been involved with the Ramakrishna movement. One is a man called V. Krishnaswamy Iyer. So Krishnaswamy Iyer was a legal luminary, one of the biggest names in the world of law in Madras. So Krishnaswamy Iyer was a great philanthropist. He founded the Madras Sanskrit College, an institution, an Oriental institution that's one of its kind, and is still functions going strong. So that's the Madras Sanskrit College. He founds what is called the Venkatramana Ayurveda Dispensary way back in the early 1900s. But Krishnaswamy Iyer's biggest thing, what shall I say, today is the founding of the Indian Bank. Right, when the Arbuthnot Bank crash happens in the early 1900s, it takes away savings of everybody, right from the governor of Madras to the poor, the man at the fag end of the social spectrum. So all of them have lost money thanks to the Arbuthnot Bank crash, and so there's a time when they decide that there has to be. So there are legal proceedings, and George Arbuthnot and then the Arbuthnot company is brought to book and things like that. But there arises a need, there is talk that there has to be an Indian enterprise, a banking enterprise that would serve Indian interests primarily. So that's how Indian Bank is founded. So Krishnaswamy Iyer, who leads the proceedings, who is one of the major figures involved in the litigation against the Arbuthnot Bank. So he is one of the founders of the Indian Bank. How is Krishnaswamy Iyer related to the Ramakrishna movement? Krishnaswamy Iyer was one of the figures who were actively involved when Swami Vivekananda is making his trip to, even in the 1893 visit of Swami Vivekananda to Madras, and in 1897 he is part of the reception committee which accords Swami Vivekananda a grand welcome here. In 1902, after Swamiji's Mahasamadhi, in July 1902, when a public meeting is convened here at Madras, it is again Krishnaswamy Iyer who participates there, and he is again involved in that. Those of you who visited the Ramakrishna Mutt, for that the heritage walk about a month ago, you started your walk at a beautifully maintained garden space opposite the old shrine. That was the shrine. That is the site of the original shrine of the Ramakrishna, the first permanent shrine of the Ramakrishna Mutt. The appeal for funds for building that shrine was issued by V. Krishnaswamy Iyer. So he was a man who was closely connected with the Ramakrishna order. Subramania Bharati's first ever collection of poems called Swadesh Geetangal was published thanks to Krishnaswamy Iyer's munificence. So it was Krishnaswamy Iyer who funded the publication, the first edition of Swadesh Geetangal of Subramania Bharati. This is in 1907 or so. There is one other man, a man called Dr. M.C. Nanjun Rao, with whom Bharati is closely associated here with Madras. I will come to Subramania with Dr. Nanjun Rao a bit later in the presentation. undoubtedly the biggest influence, one of the biggest influences from the Ramakrishna order on Subramanian Bharati's life was Sister Nivedita. 1904, Bharatiyar, as I said, he joins the Swadesha Mitran, and that is the time he is also getting involved a bit more deeply into the freedom movement. He attends the 1905 the Banaras session of the Indian National Congress. In 1906 he again attends the Calcutta session of the Indian National Congress, and that is how he comes to meet Sister Nivedita. At first he is a bit, there is a bit of unease with which he interacts with her, probably because she was a foreign, she was a foreign national. She was into the Ramakrishna order, but she is still a foreign national. So for whatever reason, there is a bit of initial hesitation with her. But then after that, Sister Nivedita is supposed to have asked Bharatiyar, inquired if he was married. And he said, yes, I am married. And then the next question Sister Nivedita asks him is, where is your wife? Why have you not brought her? And then so Bharatiyar says, it's not in our custom that, the women are treated, or they are brought out in public, into the public and all that. So, and then Sister Nivedita is believed to have remarked, what do you mean? Women are not supposed to be brought in public and all that. See, half of you are fighting for the freedom struggle, while the other half of is in bondage, right? Your women of your own household are in bondage. So when half the country is in bondage, what are your other half? What is the other half fighting for really, right? For the freedom. And Bharati is completely floored. He is just astounded. And he goes on to remark, this is an English transliteration of his writing in Tamil. But this is what he says on Sister Nivedita. Just like Lord Krishna showered his Vishwarupa to Arjuna and explained to him the truth, similarly, Sister Nivedita had described to me the full form of our Mother India, the Bharata Mata, and infused into me the force of nationalism, the Swadeshi spirit, and hence she is my Guru. So Bharatiyar publicly acknowledges Sister Nivedita as his Guru, and he goes on to dedicate not one or two but three of his works to Sister Nivedita. Swadesha Geetangal, I think, carries this introduction that I just, this dedication that I just read out. A prose work of Subramanian Bharati, a work called Jnanaratham, and there he says, I bow unto my mother Nivedita, who is dedicated to grace, a temple of love, the sun to the darkness of my heart, rain to the crop of my great country, riches to the wretched poor, and the fire that burns despicable thraldom. So, the words are even more, fiery when you read the Tamil import, but this is the English transliteration for those here. So, Subramanian Bharati dedicates three of his works to Sister Nivedita. Very, very interestingly, how many of you here have heard of the flag designed by Sister Nivedita? Right? So the Sister Nivedita flag, the flag which is called the Sister Nivedita flag, is believed to be probably the earliest vision for a national flag of the country. Again, very, very unfortunate, you can't see the thing here because this slide would be visually a lot more appealing if the presentation was there. But the flag is designed around the Vajra.
Just change it.
You want to change the laptop and see?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll give it a minute, we'll give it a couple of minutes then. That's Bharati with his wife Chellamma. This is a much later photograph. Thank you for fixing this. So I think This is Subramanian Bharati with Chennamma, his wife, and this is a photograph from much later in life, obviously. The man on the right is V. Krishnaswamy Iyer, the man I just spoke about, who was instrumental in Bharati's in publishing the first edition of his works. The man on the left is Dr. Nanjun Rao, about whom I will speak about in just a moment's time. Sister Nivedita, and let me see if I can read out the thing in Tamil. Arulukku Nivedanamai Anbilkor, I think it's very Adiye Nenjil Nyayirku. Okay, so but that's the thing. So sorry, it's not. It's very. The text is not very clear here, but that's the thing. The Sister Nivedita flag. This is supposed to be the first ever flag that was thought of. I mean, today, the flag wasn't really, we know what the current flag looks like, but this is the first flag which is supposed to have been designed for the country. And then you can see the words Vande Mataram written in Bengali, and there is the central thing is supposed to resemble Vajra, the Vajrayuda of Indra. So that's supposed to be the representation of around which the flag is designed. Now the flag is displayed at the Indian National Congress session in 1906. In a song, in one of Bharatiya's songs, which is titled Tayin Manikudi Pari, behold the flag of the motherland, right? There are references here to this particular flag. Ongi Vadandor Kambam. Ongi Vadandor Kambam. There rises the pole. Adan Uchiyin Mel Vande Mataram Endra Vangin Ezhudha Tigadu. So on top of the flag, you have the words Vande Mataram written in Bengali. Seyya Pattoli Visi Parandadu Pari. See this flag which is made of silk, which is very interesting. Sister Nivedita's, the flag design is designed in silk, and the silk flag is still maintained in a museum there in Calcutta. So, and it's been restored recently is what I gather. So, Seyya Pattoli Visi Parandadu Pari. So look at this flag that is flying, made of silk that is flying. Indiran Vajram Orpal. Indra's Vajra on one side. Adil Yengal Turukkar Ilampire Yorpal. Now you see this kind of a crescent that is on top, so that he interprets it as being a representation of the Turkar. I mean, Turkar in thing is Muslims. So the Muslim Brotherhood. So Subramanian Bharati pays homage in he's paying homage to Sister Nivedita and the impact that she has had on Bharati's life. So Tayin Manikudi Pari, so it's a very famous song, one of Bharati's famous poems. After meeting Sister Nivedita, when he comes back to Madras, Swamiji resigns from the Sudesha Mitran. Bharati resigns from the Sudesha Mitran, and he is now the editor of a Tamil magazine called India. India is run by a person called Mandayam Srinivasacharya, and he is from the Mandayam clan, the same clan to which Arasinga Perumal belonged to. So Srinivasacharya is a nationalist, and so India, it doesn't ascribe the editorship to Subramanian Bharati, because by this time he's gained a bit of notoriety, right? So the British are looking out for works which are, they are viewing every work in public domain with deeper lens, because so that sedition can be slapped on anyone or on any piece which is deemed critical of the government and all that. So India, Bharati is not named the editor, but he is the person who actually edits the India magazine. In 1907, there is news of his impending arrest, and he is soon to flee to Pondicherry, which is under the French control. So which means it's not British India, but it's French India. So that's deemed to be a safer haven for Bharati. Now before he goes, Now it's time to get back to this man whom I mentioned a couple of slides ago, Dr. Nanjun Rao. MC Nanjun Rao, again a man from Mysore, born in the 1860s, comes to Madras in the 1880s, qualifies himself as a doctor, is in government service for some time, quits government service because one of his superiors deems Ayurveda to be a barbaric science. So Nanjun Rao quits in protest, and so he comes out and starts private practice, establishes a hugely successful private practice, and the people that he treats are right from nobility to right to the common man. So there is a huge, very immensely successful private practice. But he is an ardent nationalist. He is a public spirited man. He is an ardent nationalist at heart. And if you are public spirited, then so you invariably come into contact with. In Triplicane, he opens a dispensary called the MCN Eclectic Dispensary, which is basically a dispensary where the poor can come and avail of treatment, consultations, and medicines free of cost. So the MCN Eclectic Dispensary is founded by Nanjun Rao. And in 1893, when Swami Vivekananda is on his pre-American visit to Madras, he visits Sashi Vilas, the residence of Dr. Nanjun Rao. Sashi Vilas stood until 15 years ago, and it was a residence that stood bang opposite the Mylapore tank. I mean, the huge tank of the Kapaleshwar temple that all of you must have seen. So this house stood bang opposite that. So Sashi Vilas is one of the places which Swami Vivekananda visited. So that's how his interaction with Swami Vivekananda start. Both Alasinga Perumal and Nanjun Rao figure prominently in Swami Vivekananda's correspondence that he has with his Madras devotees from the time he is in the US. So Alasinga Perumal and Nanjun Rao are again involved thanks on the direct supervision and on the direct directions of Swami Vivekananda. They are involved with with bringing out two magazines which predate the formal founding of the Ramakrishna order itself. The Brahmavadin, or the Messenger of the Truth, and the Awaken India. The Awaken India, of course, takes on a later avatar called the Prabuddha Bharata, which is today the official organ of the Ramakrishna order. So Nanjun Rao is a very public spirited personality, and so he attracts or he starts gaining a friendship of a lot of people who are involved with the freedom movement. So much so, I mean, there are people like Bipin Chandra Pal, who is a very well known, who is an extremist leader. So there are people like Bipin Chandra Pal. There is a man called A.B. Kolatkar from Pune, from Nagpur, and then there is Nilakanta Brahmachari from down south. Okay. So there are people who are considered extremist leaders with whom Nanjun Rao is in contact with, and he organizes a series of, when Bipin Chandra Pal visits Madras in 1906, 1907 or so. So he delivers a series of lectures in Sashi Vilas. So now this Nanjun Rao is slowly gaining attention in the eyes of the British, and so in the records, in the CID, the criminal investigation department records, he is credited as being a man capable of great political intrigue. So that's the word that they attribute him to Nanjun Rao. But then they still hold him in great respect because he is treating, being a doctor, he is treating a lot of the families of high-ranking people, of government officials, of police, and all of that. So Dr. Nanjun Rao he is a great admirer of Subramania Bharati. And in 1907, there is a magazine which is funded by Nanjun Rao, which is called the Bala Bharata. Bharati in his lifetime is associated with a lot of Tamil magazines, like the India, a magazine called Vijaya, a magazine called Chakravartini, and so he's involved with a lot of Tamil magazines. But Bala Bharata is probably the only English magazine with whom Bharati was associated as an editor in a formal way. Bala Bharata or Young India. The first edition comes out on Deepavali Day in 1907. This is November of 1907. 3 issues of Bala Bharata still survive online in the public archives. So they are freely downloadable, and when you look at Bala Bharata, there is no doubt whatsoever as to who is the guiding force or guiding spirit behind that. because you look at the it's in small print there. It says Balabharata or Young India, a monthly journal of Indian national regeneration, and the tagline reads, "Arise, awake, and stop not till the goal is reached." So it is clear that Swamiji's spirit is the one guiding this magazine. And you look at the the 3 editions that are available online, you can see that Swami Vivekananda's address to the youth is being actually reproduced here in the pages of the Balabharata. It says, "Unfurl the banner of love, Vivekananda's trumpet call to the young men of India," where there's a commentary on Swami Vivekananda's address to young men, right? And the words that you see written there, "The day Hinduism was defined once again, and that very day the seeds of Indian nationalism were sown." So that is the reference to the. Am I audible? Someday I feel. Okay. So those lines that are written from the first issue of the Balabharata magazine.
But sir, you are audible. We can.
No, but for the thing online, and I'm audible for. Hello. Yeah. So the words, the sentence that you see written there, "That day Hinduism was defined once again, and that very day the seeds of Indian nationalism were sown." This is a reference to the famous Chicago Address, and this is you can find these words in the first edition, in the first ever issue of the Balabharata magazine. The Balabharata magazine was edited by Subramanya Bharati, but it's very clear, it's amply clear here, as to who was the guiding force and guiding spirit behind this magazine. In 1907, so Subramanya Bharati, it's time for him to now escape, because the net has been cast wide for him. And how does he escape? According to one account, very interesting account, is that the escape of Bharati to Pondicherry was actually facilitated by Dr. Nandan Rao himself. Because Nandan Rao, apparently Bharati spent 3 days in hiding in Nandan Rao's bungalow, and the police are on the lookout and they come searching, but they apparently asked Nandan Rao as to if he has set his eyes on Bharati, and Nandan Rao says no. And the police also don't want to search because they hold Nandan Rao with some kind of respect and all that. So, and then at the end of 3 days, Bharati is dressed as a fakir. He's put on a boat, and along with one of Nandan Rao's servants, he is sent to Markan. So that's one of the accounts. I mean, it's not officially recounted anywhere, but one of the legends, as per Dr. Nandan Rao's family himself, states that the escape of Bharati to Pondicherry was actually facilitated by Nandan Rao himself. In Pondicherry, whom does he meet? This dapper looking, very handsome, suave man who is now in Pondicherry. Anyone? I mean, the photograph is it's a photograph which, I mean, a lot of us have not seen here, or not used to seeing this man in this kind of a photograph, right? The one and only Aurobindo Ghosh, right? Aurobindo comes to Pondicherry following his, after he is released from jail in the Alipur bombing case, right? So this is 1910, 1911 or so. Very interesting. I thought I should bring in Aurobindo here, because I mean, this is Aurobindo in South India is mostly probably a a post-freedom movement nationalist avatar of his. But then, I mean, I think it's still a very important, because I don't think he ever gave up nationalism or he gave up this love for the thing, even after, his life took a completely spiritual and philosophical turn by itself. So even though this is his post, active days as a nationalist avatar, I think it's very important to bring him here, because he was yet another life who was greatly impacted by the Ramakrishna movement. When he is in jail at the Alipur, following the Alipur bombing case and all that, it is the Holy Mother who acts as the greatest pillar of support for Aurobindo's wife, Mrinalini Devi. She considers Mrinalini Devi to be her daughter-in-law. And she says, by the grace of Guru Maharaj, by the grace of Sri Ramakrishna, nothing will happen to Aurobindo. He will come out a free man. So, and she gives lot of moral support and kind of succor to. He acts as this guiding light for Mrinalini Devi. What about Aurobindo himself? He says, so these are his words. It was the spirit of Swami Vivekananda who first gave me a clue in the direction of the supermind. This clue led me to see how the truth consciousness works in everything. So he says, for 15 days, for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, Swami Vivekananda visited me in prison, right? And someone asked him, was it a vision that you saw? He says, I'm more fool to believe a vision. I saw him. I saw Swami Vivekananda coming and visiting me, and he taught me. He spoke to me for 15 days. He taught me the Upanishads. He taught me the meaning of our spirituality, of our thing. So the path that he leads, that Sri Aurobindo leads after his internment, the spiritual progress, a great inspiration is Swami Vivekananda. So again, you can see, the influence of the Ramakrishna movement in, people involved in the freedom struggle and, in nationalism and all that. Bharati spends nearly a decade in Pondicherry. Comes back to Madras, comes back to British India in 1918, 1919 or so. Again imprisoned, again out of prison, and in 1921, he finally passes away. Remarkable coincidence, or whatever you may call it, again, I really don't know. But the day he passes away is the night of September 11th. 9th of September 11th and the early hours of September 12th is when Subramania Bharati passes away. September 11th, 1893 is the day, in his own words, when the spirit of Hinduism was born. Swami Vivekananda's lecture. I mean, there are certain things that you really can't fathom fathom your mind around as to what do you call this. But suffice to say that he was one man who was greatly influenced and deeply influenced by the Ramakrishna movement in his freedom struggle. Now, by this time, the Ramakrishna order, the Ramakrishna movement, the teachings of Swami Vivekananda and Sri Ramakrishna are slowly finding their way into the Tamil consciousness, because there are works in Tamil that are now coming out. This is early 1904, 1905, 1906, during that period. So there are works in Tamil that are coming out on the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda, on their lives and all that. This photograph is of Sashi Maharaj, and this is from a periodical in 1911, from a magazine, Tamil magazine in 1911. And this is soon after Sashi Maharaj passes away. And in fact, there is an editorial which is titled "The Passing Away of Swami Ramakrishna Anga." So by this time, the Ramakrishna Vivekananda movement is slowly coming into the public consciousness in Tamil Nadu. There are Colombo to Almora, the famous lectures from Colombo to Almora are translated into Tamil of Swamiji, and so that's how slowly the teachings are getting spread into Tamil Nadu. Sashi Maharaj. This is the second man I want to cover in the course of this presentation, Vavu Chidambaram Pillai. A man, a fiery orator, a close associate of Subramania Bharati, greatly inspired by Subramania Bharati. And Suram and Vausi Pillai born in 1872 in a village called Ottapidara, down south in Tirunelveli district, not very far away from Surone Bhalati's Etayapuram village. Hardly a few 10 kilometers or something away from Ottapidara. So born in 1872, has his early education in his village, goes to Toothukudi to Tuticorin, or Toothukudi as it's called today, or the Tamil version. So goes to Tuticorin, qualifies and then later qualifies as a lawyer and practices law. He's a man who at a young age has great love for Shaivite philosophy, for Vedantic studies, and he reads a lot of spiritual literature in Tamil. Chidambaram Pillai is drawn to the freedom struggle. He considers Balagangadhar Tilak as one of his heroes, and you can see Subramaniam and Chidambaram Pillai is involved in organizing the Indian National Congress sessions. He participates, is an active participant there. Chidambaram Pillai is in 1906. Chidambaram Pillai meets Sashi Maharaj along with his aunt. He meets Swami Ramakrishna in Ice House along with his aunt. Sashi Maharaj is believed to have asked him, what are you doing, and what are you doing to promote the native handicrafts? What are you doing handicrafts? What are you doing to promote, the local treasures? What are you really doing? To which Chidambaram Pillai gives an answer on a very, very philosophical note, and he says, all of this is Maya, and stuff like that. Swami Ramakrishna believes is said to have answered to him in one word. He says, Swadeshiyam. Swadeshiyam, which means promote the local, promote Indian. Today you've got, the Make in India call, Atmanirbhar Bharat, self-reliance and things like that. More than a century ago, there was a monk from the Ramakrishna order who greatly influenced a man in the freedom struggle with the word Swadeshiyam. And he vowed Chidambaram Pillai, he recounts, he says that, it was like someone had put sown a seed into a good soil, a good seed into a soil, right? And then that would germinate, that would sprout, and that would become Swadeshiyam, or the promotion of Swadeshi, or the local or the native, would become the mantra for Babu Chidambaram Pillai's life. How does that happen? That is the time he is from Toothukudi, and Toothukudi is a port town, right? Before that, Chidambaram Pillai also has an occasion to meet Swami Abhedananda of one of the direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, who is touring the West, and for about a decade he tours the West from 1896 nearly to from around 1906 or so. And so when he lands in India, so he comes to Tuticorin. Tuticorin is a harbour, right? So he comes and Chidambaram Pillai, and when Swami Abhedananda comes to India, he returns to India, Sashi Maharaj, Swami Brahmananda, all of them go there to welcome Swami Abhedananda. And Chidambaram Pillai, he organizes a huge welcome party for Swami Abhedananda. And there are an enthusiastic band of people whom Chidambaram Pillai has organized, all of them wearing a special uniform, and Abhedananda is brought in procession from the ship, and with all these people dressed in a special uniform, chanting Vande Mataram, all the way. So you can already see that the influence of the movement is starting to work on Chidambaram Pillai. Toothukudi is a port town, and so which means that there is a lot of steamer traffic. The thing that is the company that holds the monopoly is the British India Steel Navigation Company. It holds the monopoly for passenger freight, as well as for passenger as well as for freight, for cargo movement. And so Chidambaram Pillai decides to fight the British in that segment, in that particular thing. And so he floats what is called the Swadeshi Steel Navigation Company in 1906 with a group of it's an incorporated company, share capital of 10 lakhs, contributed by a lot of noble, very rich gentlemen from South India. And he says this ship will not, and the route is from Tuticorin to Colombo. So he's now acting as a direct competition to the British India Steam Navigation Company. And he says, so this ship is not only meant for passenger, for carrying freight, but it's also meant for carrying Britishers along with their bag and baggage. So this is what Chidambaram Pillai says. So now, obviously, British India Steam Navigation Company is a lot more financially sound and secure. So they indulge in massive undercutting, right? So they bring down fares substantially, and they bleed the Swadeshi Steam Navigation Company dry for a period of time. Chidambaram Pillai is also arrested around the same time as Arvind Ghosh and all that. Chidambaram Pillai is also arrested here locally on another case, and he is put in prison for 3-4 years, and that completely collapses the Swadeshi Steam Navigation Company. In 1911 or so, the company is liquidated and it is sold very, very tragically to British hands. So, but then Chidambaram Pillai, I mean, there's no doubt, Swadeshi. So he lived and died by the sword of Swadeshi. That again was a seed that was sprouted by the Ramakrishna. I'm in the last couple of slides of my presentation. A man called Subramanya Shiva, a fiery orator, an orator who could hold audiences captive by a mere sentence. One of Chidambaram Pillai's closest compatriots. So when Chidambaram Pillai said, this baggage is not, this ship can not only carry, goods, but also the Britishers with their bag and baggage. Subramanya Shiva interrupts, Shiva interrupts Chidambaram Pillai and says, why should they leave with their bag and baggage, right? Because the bag and baggage contains the property looted here from South India, from India. So they better leave this and they go on their own. So, right? So that is Subramanya Shiva. Subramanya Shiva, interestingly, authors more than 10 books on the teachings on the life of Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda. I'll read out a few of the books. They are Atma Jnanaratam, which contains 1004 pearls of wisdom of Swami Vivekananda. Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa Vijayam, Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsar Brahmanandar Sambhashane. So he writes in Tamil about the interactions between Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Brahmananda. Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsar Charitrangalum Upadeshangalum, that is the life and teachings of Sri Ramakrishna. So he authors more than 10 books based on the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna and Vivekananda. Where from this thing I really haven't been able to find out. But here was yet another man, an important part of the freedom struggle who was directly influenced by the teachings of the Ramakrishna order. Subramanya Shiva was afflicted with leprosy, and on that ground, the British found it a very convenient ground to ban him from traveling across the country in trains, because leprosy was deemed a public, it's a public disease. So, but the man still managed to fight across all odds. In 1925, in a small village called Paparapatti in Dharmapuri district, he decides that he has to construct, Subramanya Shiva decides he has to construct a temple for Bharata Mata. The Bharata Mata temple would be a temple where people of all caste and creed can come and pray. And the priest is someone he believes would be a person who believes in the concept of Bharatiyam or oneness of the entire country. And for the foundation stone for the temple is laid by Deshabandhu Chittaranjan Das in 1923. But that's how far the temple progresses until Subramanya Shiva's lifetime. Subramanya Shiva passes away in 1925. A century later, there is a memorial for Subramanya Shiva there in that place, and there is a Bharata Mata memorial, but a temple for Bharata Mata is still awaiting to be constructed. Of course, it has become a matter for political, discourse and all that. For those of whom were following local politics and all that, they would come to know that there is some amount of thing that's going on around that. But anyway, but that was yet another famous fighter from the freedom struggle who was involved from the now. So I come to the end of this slideshow. This is my last slide. A man, I mean, in chronological order, probably I could have started with him. A man called Sir S. Subramania Iyer. Again, one of the leading lights of the bar of legal luminary, born in 1842, acting Chief Justice of the Madras High Court for 3 times. Again, I mean, that was the highest position that he could aspire for. So, a man again, a very, very public spirited personality, an ardent nationalist, and interestingly also a theosophist. A very, very, a theosophist about whom we were just discussing when we were on the car along with Swamiji. So, the theosophical movement and Swami Vivekananda, I mean, they've had their own kind of a colorful history, if I can put it that way, right? So, so here is Subramania Iyer, who is a theosophist, an ardent theosophist at heart on one side, but on the other, he is actually a strong supporter of Swami Vivekananda. In fact, in 1893, when people of Madras want Swami Vivekananda to represent Hinduism and the religion, so that discussion is supposed to have taken place at Subramania Iyer's house. So, and Subramania Iyer in 1907 he retires from public service because he's getting old and completely devotes himself to spirituality and to public causes. He founds what's called, and he is knighted in 1900. He becomes Sir S. Subramania Iyer. He finds he begins what's called the Dharma Rakshana Sabha in 1908 to tackle ineffective temple committees and work towards administrative reforms in temples. So, Dharma Rakshana Sabha, so we're talking about the pre-HRLC days. So, he was a man who was much ahead of those times. He was a great advocate of Swadeshi, Theosophical movement, which means that you are in direct contact with Annie Besant. And Annie Besant, which means Home Rule League. So in 1916, when Annie Besant founds the Home Rule League, Subramania Iyer is made the honorary president of the Home Rule League. Annie Besant, D. Tiwadia and a few others from the movement are arrested the following year, and Subramania Iyer is, he writes a letter to President Woodrow Wilson of the United States, drawing his attention to what is happening here, and what is the public, and see, we are also in the middle of the First World War then. So, and Indians are fighting the war on behalf of the British across the globe. So India is being drawn into a war. It has no direct impact, just by virtue of being a British colony. So Indians are dying on behalf of the British. So Subramania Iyer writes a letter to Woodrow Wilson of the United States and says he draws the attention of all that is happening here in India, of Indians dying on behalf of their colonial masters, on the arrests, on the public government, and he says, please use your good offices with the majesty, with the King Emperor of Britain, and the British government, which may not be fully aware of the ground realities here. So he shoots off a letter there. Imagine this is a knight of the who is being recognized by the British government, writing against it openly to the head of a foreign state. Obviously, this is not viewed very well by the government. The Viceroy of India, Lord Chelmsford, censures Subramania Iyer directly. And Subramania Iyer, decides, right? I'll have to show my protest in some other way. Today, we read about a lot of them giving up awards, giving up titles as a sign of protest. This man gave up his knighthood as a sign of protest against the arrest of Annie Besant and the freedom struggle there, and it was just actually happening there. Again, a man who was in close connection with the Ramakrishna movement, who was a great follower of Swami Vivekananda. Very, very interesting, as I come to the end of the presentation, I think we can sum it up. For an organization that is completely apolitical, and for an organization that believes, service to mankind, spiritual progress through service to mankind, its path. It has influenced quite a few nationalists. It has influenced nationalism. It has influenced quite a few people, prominent people, not only in South India, but also if you read history of Bengal, the freedom movement in Bengal, where the Ramakrishna movement has a much more direct connection, right? So with Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose is one more example. So he meets Swami Brahmananda, and Brahmananda says you have work elsewhere to do. So it is very, very interesting that a completely apolitical organization has played such an important and a vital role in the promotion of nationalism and in the freedom struggle of our country. Thank you very much for being a wonderful audience, and my thanks to whoever has managed to tune in there. I hope this presentation, you enjoyed the presentation as much as I enjoyed preparing for it. Thank you very much.